What's going on, everyone? Happy Wednesday. Welcome back to another episode of AKP Sports Talk. As always, here with Korea. How are you doing today, Korea?
I'm good. I'm good. I actually got to tune into that Seattle New Mexico State game on it. That was a great game. We're gonna talk about that later. Other than that, also that UConn Nova game last night. What an ending. We're gonna talk about that soon. But how you doing? How's your Wednesday going?
It's going mighty fine. So we'll start off with just MLB quick. They met again today. The two sides. I saw they met for about 5 hours, so another lengthy meeting. The MLB latest offer is raising the minimum salary 10K each year. The deal, which a lot of people are saying, is nothing. Obviously, for all the money that they have. Um, so that's that. I mean, they've met for I don't know what the exact time they met was for Monday and Tuesday, but it seemed like it was a few hours at least, like 3 or 4 hours at least, based off the tweets, and then 5 hours today. But it seems like they're still quite. It seems like they're still a bit of ways away from coming to an agreement. So today's Wednesday, February 23rd. So we have Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So 4 more days until 4 more days to come to an agreement where they can still start the season on time. Um, what are you thinking, Korea? Is it's not looking too good, or any? I guess any thoughts from Monday when we were talking about it?
Yeah, it's difficult. Obviously, this is just a situation we have to keep monitoring. It's not like we can really do much. I mean, we just been sitting and watching. I mean, we saw what happened on Monday, right? We already talked about that they met for about 4 or 5 hours, and obviously here we are Wednesday, and we're still kind of repeating the same thing. Not really much progress. Man, you mentioned the salary raise of 10K. That's actually, you're right. It's not really that much. Considering how much some of these stars are making in the MLB right now. So it's looking a little bleak right now. Obviously, we still have till Friday um, to make sure we start on time. But
Or
as
Monday?
they, yeah, until not Friday, till Monday. But
Yeah.
that's only 5 days away, and I mean, obviously they're going to meet tomorrow and Friday, to try and salvage some kind of relationship between obviously the MLB and the MLB Players Association. It's looking bleak. I'm not going to lie to you, but at the same time, there's still that little glimmer of hope in me to try and see whether or not we're going to have an on time season. I mean, if we don't, that's okay. I mean, I've already come to terms that an on time season may not be 100% guaranteed. And I'm not really going to complain about that because, I mean, yes, obviously 100 and the full schedule would be amazing. But at the same time, I already have, internally like just accepted the fact that coming into this offseason, we knew that this was going to be the biggest issue with the MLB, restructuring that CBA so we can get an agreement on both sides. And there were early talks of lockout. You remember back in like November and December. And then finally hit in December, and we're like, well, what's going to happen now? Because, I mean, obviously, us being big Mariner fans, we were still trying to get, guys like Trevor Story and Chris Bryant and these big bats that are coming into the lineup. And now everything's just being delayed, and it kind of just is stagnant. Like, we don't know what to do. All right, this is the funniest story. I went to Costco today, and I was about to get season tickets for the Mariners. But then at the last second, I said, well, I don't know because of the season. So it affects everything. Like, I don't know. Like, I mean, I want to have a positive outlook on this because I know that the MLB and the PA are gonna get some kind of agreement done. It's just if this progress is not really progress, it's just constant, same line energy right there, then what's the point? I mean, it's just delaying everything. I mean, I know the Players Association with Tyon and Scherzer and all those guys. I think they're gonna try to get some deal done, but obviously the MLB is not really doing their part to even like listen to the players' demands a little bit. I mean, yes, universal DH is one, but there's still a lot of work to be done. So I'm holding out some hope, but at the same time, it's looking pretty bleak. I would say we have about an 80% chance that the season will probably not even start on time.
Yeah, I mean, I was seeing people on Twitter say like even like 10% that a deal gets done by Monday. So, I mean, miracles can happen, but it's gonna need to take that miracle for them to reach that agreement. And then the question comes of how long does the delay go? Because obviously these guys are all billionaires for the owners and millionaires for the players, but I mean they're still losing a lot of money the further or the longer the lockout holds. So hopefully, even if they don't get to an agreement by Monday, they can get to a place where it won't take that much longer to reach that agreement. But right now, it's just a day by day process. I mean, they were in there for 5 hours today, so I mean, they have to be talking about something for. I mean, I don't think they were talking all 5 hours, but for even if it was like 3 hours, the two sides are talking like they have to be talking about something going somewhere. So. Um, I mean, if they can talk for another 3 to 4 or 5 hours the next few days, then we'll see where it goes. But right now, yeah, it's not looking too good for the season to start on time. So we'll get into college basketball. We'll start off with the UConn and Villanova game you were talking about earlier. UConn squeaked out the win 71-69. It looked like Villanova was going to squeeze it out. They were up by 4 with about 30 seconds left, shooting 2 free throws. And then they missed the front of the 1-1. UConn goes down, hits a 3 to cut it to 1, and then Gillespie turns it over. RJ Cole layup, and then that's with like 5 seconds left to put UConn up 1. And then Gillespie goes for, they're going the whole court 5 seconds, and with the second left gets called for almost a foul. And then they foul the second left, make one, miss one, and they lose by 2. Sonego leads the way for UConn again, 20 points as always. I believe right now, Providence and Nova are tied atop the Big East. What were your takeaways from the game, Korea?
Well, first of all, that was a fantastic storybook March Madness ending right there. I mean, you go back to when head coach for the Huskies, Dan Hurley, he got ejected. I mean, it was the weirdest ejection ever, but he got ejected for piping up his crowd, hyping up his crowd. And then, obviously, there was a lot of confusion there. So now, obviously, Nova is playing UConn without UConn's head coach in Hartford, Connecticut. And you're questioning, is UConn going to be able to pull this out? Odds on against them, playing the team that's in front of them in the conference at home, still probably a tournament team. You start to question those things. And UConn got a gritty win. Obviously, RJ Cole at the end, that nice layup to put them over 1. But, I mean, you got to talk about collapses. Villanova in the last 20 seconds, that was just a collapse. I mean, I've never seen really anything that astronomically bad from Jay Wright and his Villanova squad throughout his time at Villanova. It was just a really bad collapse. I mean, they just couldn't hit. I mean, obviously, turnover by Gillespie, and then obviously all the missed shots at the end. I mean, it just looked like Villanova had the opportunity right on the silver platter for them, but they just couldn't cash in. So it's not like it's a bad loss for Nova. Obviously, this is obviously a tough road loss for them, but still, it was in a very, very electric Hartford, Connecticut arena. Obviously, very loud. It was pretty much just kind of a test of, one of the best teams in the conference. And I don't think this just diminishes Villanova a lot. It does raise a question on how they will be down the stretch, in actual tournament games when they're playing these Sweet 16 Elite 8 teams, if they can actually keep the composure, and actually make their shots, or if they will crumble. So I do want to commend, obviously, RJ Cole and that whole UConn squad on a great gritty win at home against Villanova, and I kind of cemented them as a tournament team. But at the same time, Villanova, it's not horrible, but it does raise some eyebrows on whether or not Villanova is going to be that, that kind of team that could sneak into, the Final Four and maybe even have that kind of run that they had back in 2016 as a 2 seed. So overall, it was a fantastic game, though. I knew it was going to be back and forth. Because of that, just because of that UConn way they play defense. And obviously, Jay Wright, I mean, his number one guy, Colin Gillespie, excuse me. If he's having that off game, then it kind of just diminishes the whole squad. And I feel like Villanova is kind of leaning on Colin Gillespie a little too much as a crutch in those big moments. Because yes, he has the experience, but at the same time, like, you got to have an option B or an option C right at the ready in case either he goes in case he gets injured again, or something like this in like the few seconds of a big game where he turns over the ball and just commits these fouls or whatever, and just is out of sync with his team.
Yeah, Villanova will get about a week. I believe it's a week from yesterday, so 6 days. They'll get about a 6-day rest before they have their rematch against Providence that we talked about last time they played. So that's March 1st. UConn was number 21 going in, so they were like on the cusp of like a borderline 5 seed. So maybe this pushes them up to potentially a 4 seed if they can, win out. I think they have like 3 regular season games left, so that'll be something to monitor. But yeah, Big East down the stretch. So now we'll go into the Iowa absolutely destroying Michigan State, 86-60. Iowa was up 14.5, so they were controlling basically the entire game. These two teams are trending in the opposite directions. Iowa has won 5 of 6. Spartans have lost 5 of 6. It seems like Michigan State, if they struggle to score 60-65, they struggle to win. But Iowa just controlled this game from the start. So what were your takeaways, Korea?
Look, if I'm talking about teams that are definitely going to probably be upset in the first round right now, I'm talking about Michigan State. I mean, you mentioned it. If they don't score at least 65 points in a game, they're losing in the first round, or they're losing the game. I mean, we've seen it in their last game against Rutgers. They lost by 21 on the road. Then they lost by 8 at home against Wisconsin. Then they actually beat Indiana in a must-win game for them. And then they lose to Penn State, where they scheduled to score even 60. And then they lose to Illinois by 5 at home. That was a bad loss. And then now you lose to Iowa by 20 on the road. Like, this Michigan State team just does not have their rhythm well. I mean, obviously against Illinois they put up 74 points, but in last night's game against Iowa on the road, it just didn't even look that pretty. I mean, Michigan State, they brought in everyone. They only hit 8 of 26 from behind the arc. Not good at all. Only shooting 36% from the field too. That's not going to get it done. I mean, let's be real here. I mean, when you have just inefficiency coming in, it just does not. It's not going to go well. And I think Izzo's still head coaching, right, for Michigan State. Yeah, I think Izzo is really. He's actually really now, because I saw a lot of players from that Michigan State team come in. I saw a lot of people who I've never seen before. So I think Michigan State, I think they're in a crisis mode. Okay, let's see if he can play. Let's see if he can be a big contributor off the bench. And it's not really working out for Coach Izzo right now. So, and then speaking of the rest of the season, I mean, you got to play Purdue on Saturday at home, which is a big game, but if you lose, are you really a tournament team? I mean, you can start questioning Michigan State, because they were like a top 15 team at one point at the beginning of the month, and now we're questioning whether or not they're a tournament team. They got to play Purdue on Saturday and then finish up against Michigan, who is obviously going to be fighting for that tournament seeding. Ohio State, who is trying to bounce back after their inconsistencies, and you finish off against Maryland, which is not that great, but still, if I'm Michigan State, I'm in panic mode. I'm in all panic mode, because they just don't look cohesive right now. They just look like a team that's just scrambling to find pieces. I mean, you're down by 14.5. That's not really going to get it done, and you let up, and just horrible defense. I mean, Iowa looked like they couldn't miss a shot. They put up 86 points. I mean, they hit almost half of their threes, and then and then from the field, you have Keegan Murray. I mean, 10 of 15 and 28. He dropped 28 against you. Where's the defense? So, and obviously, Bohannon had a pretty decent game as well, along with McCaffrey. So, if I am Michigan State, I'm in whole panic mode. Iowa, this is another tournament building resume win for for them a good win against Michigan State at home. I could see Iowa now moving up potentially to that 6 or 5 seed line with a win like this at home, a just dominant win against a team that was better at you at the beginning of the season, but now is on the downward trend, and you caught them at the right time. So for Iowa, this is a great win. And for Michigan State, it really puts everything into question on their legitimacy as a tournament team, because they always seem to have this trouble. I mean, we see them do good throughout the regular season. This happened last year. They struggled to get into the tournament, and then they end up being in the first four. And it happened last year against UCLA, who the team who went to the Final Four. So Michigan State is in a desperate panic mode, and their regular season schedule is not going to get any easier the way it's looking.
Yeah, I still feel like they're a lock for the tournament. It's just if they keep losing, they might fall to like a 7 or 8 seed and face a tougher team as in the round one, especially if they were to not fall in this slump and maybe be a 4 or 5 and have a slightly easier first round matchup. But definitely, as you said, the schedule does not get any easier. Michigan State, so they're going to want to try to find any kind of momentum because momentum is obviously big. And the regular season and tournament and conference tournament time leading into March Madness. So we'll talk about our final game. You mentioned earlier, New Mexico State beat Seattle U. It was the battle of they are tied at the top of the WAC conference. Seattle U, the game was moved from Climate Pledge Arena, where they normally play, to their smaller home arena. So it was pretty much a sold out crowd, and it was a very, very ugly game. Mexico State sweep the season series. Seattle U, one of their best scorers, Cameron Tyson, had his worst game of the season by far. 1 for 12 from the field, 1 for 10 from 3. And he didn't hit that one shot until like the second half. Seattle U was 7 for 31 overall as a team from 3. They just kept shooting threes, and none of them would go in. And Mexico State had the size advantage, like the more physical bigs. So that's partially why they couldn't really go inside. They got out rebound 50 to 36. And if you look at their first matchup a couple weeks before this game, where New Mexico State won at home, it was the same idea where they killed them where they killed CLU on the boards. And Darian Trammell, the guard for CLU, is really the only reason why they were in this game. He had 24. He had 26 in the last game between these two teams, and it was 31-28 at half, Mexico State, and Trammell had 17 of the 28 for CLU, so he was really the only reason why they were in this game. But now we look moving forward in the WAC. CLU and Sam Houston are tied 1 game back of Mexico State for first place. I guess my biggest question, because obviously the winner of this conference tournament will get in, but is there any chance if CLU wins out and say it loses a third time to Mexico State in the conference championship, do they have any chance at an at-large bid, or is it because of how small the conference is, it's only the conference winner that will get in? What do you think?
Yeah, it's unfortunate that these smaller conferences, mid-majors, are probably only get 1 bid in, except for your Missouri States and also not Missouri State, Missouri Valleys. You have your Mountain West, and then obviously there's questions about the Ohio Valley. But with the WAC this year, I think Seattle's resume, even if they do lose a third time in that championship matchup against New Mexico State, if that happens in the WAC tournament, I don't think it's strong enough to really get that at-large bid in because of all these obviously other teams who have big quad 1 wins. I mean, you look at Seattle U's resume; it's not the strongest, but at the same time, I mean, they're beating their opponents, which I wish would be just the way it would be in the tournament, and not whoever's in front of you. But obviously, there's better quality wins with whoever you're playing and all of that stuff. That's why you have so many Big Ten teams, many Big 12 teams, many Big East teams. All of that and all of that right there. But when you look at Seattle U's schedule, I mean, in terms of quality wins, they don't really have that many. I mean, they even lost to UW, who's middle of the pack and middle of the way in the Pac-12, and after that, it's just been conference play, and they've just been dominating the conference. So if if Seattle U wants to make the tournament, they're going to have to win the Western Athletic Conference. Now, New Mexico State, on the other hand, if they were to lose to Seattle U in the conference tournament championship game, then there's a chance. There's a decent chance, I would say, that New Mexico State could potentially get in because of their schedule. I mean, it's not strong. I mean, they beat Davidson. That's a big win. They beat Davidson. I think they played a close game with Alabama, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe I am mistaken. They beat Wazoo. Yeah, they beat Wazoo by 3, and that was a road win. So New Mexico State would have a better opportunity making it to the tournament. But in terms of Seattle U's at-large bid, yeah, it's sad because you have some of these good teams in these conferences who can shine, but I just don't see a good chance for Seattle U to make it unless they have to have that Western Athletic Conference tournament championship with them automatic bid.
Yeah, I'm definitely more in still in agreement that if they are gonna have 2 tournament teams, then it would have to be Seattle U or any other team other than New Mexico State winning it, and New Mexico State probably is gonna have to make the conference championship to have a chance at large bid. If they get upset early, then I think that really kills any hopes of them being at large bid. But that's what you get with these smaller conferences. So speaking of conference tournaments, they start up, I believe you said the Northeastern Conference, if I'm not mistaken, on Monday, February 28th. And again, today is February 23rd, so about 5 days away till conference tournament starts. I just wanted to go over, Kriya, your bracketology, and as we get, and we'll talk more about this, of course, as it gets closer, like next week. But any, I guess, teams in the bubble and conference tournaments to watch, where if they say make a run in their conference tournament, then they have the better chance of getting, say, a higher seed come Selection Sunday, or even just making it.
Give me 1 second here. Give me 1 second. Okay, so in terms of tournament teams right now in my bracketology, the only one that's playing next week in the conference tournament right now is Belmont. They are right behind Murray State right now in that Ohio Valley Conference. It's been always one of those 2 teams pretty much for the past, 2 or 3 years out of the Ohio Valley Conference, and they're always up there at the top. I think Belmont could be one of the – I mean, right now I have them as one of my first 4-out teams, and a lot of analysts and professional analysts have them as their first 4-out team just because of how dominant they are in their conference. I believe they are 25-4, if I'm not mistaken. A dominant – and this is going back to that 2019 year where Murray State was running the dominating all year. All of a sudden you have Belmont right behind them, who is good. They've always been good, but no one's really giving them that recognition. And that actual game is tomorrow, Murray State and Belmont. That's a game to circle on your calendars right there if you want to watch a potential upset team in the first round or 2. But okay, when you look at Belmont this year, right, they've dominated this conference. They've won games outside the conference. They're 24-5, only 2 conference losses. In terms of non-conference ones, however, I mean, they did lose a bad game at LSU. They lost by 30. That was a bad loss. They did beat Drake. They did beat Iona, who's also a tournament team right now. And then, obviously, losing to Dayton. They lost to Dayton by 2, but Dayton's also on that tournament line as well. Pretty much my next 4-out. So, in teams for next week, I have to say Belmont for sure. They also beat Chattanooga, who is running the Southern Conference right now, and St. Louis, who's also around that, tournament bubble area right there. But Belmont, I would say that's pretty much one of the teams who is in consideration. Obviously, they don't have an easy schedule. They got to play Murray State tomorrow, and I believe that is on the road. And the last time these 2 teams faced off, it was back in January where Murray State just beat them on the road by 22. So Murray State beat Belmont at Belmont. Bad, ugly game for the Bruins. But now they have a chance to redeem themselves. Huge game tomorrow. And I feel like if they win that game potentially, I think that may be a bigger lock than what people may think that is, because Murray State is a dominant team. And yes, they're number 19 and, they're dominating their conference. And, they've won all their games and everything. But people like Murray State can compete with a team like an Alabama, I mean, and an Auburn and stuff like that. So if I say Belmont will probably be one of the teams to look out for next week in terms of their conference tournament, which starts, I believe, a week from today or a week from tomorrow. So one of those 2 days. That's
when March 2nd or 3rd.
Yeah, I believe it's one of those 2 days. So that's definitely a team to watch out for in the conference tournament next week. But there's also plenty of other conference tournaments next week. If you look at the full list here, I believe I know the Missouri Valley Conference starts next week, and that's always a big one between teams like Loyola Chicago, Drake, all those big teams from the conference. They could potentially get two teams in, but it's not going to be easy considering their conference is not that good. But it would have to be someone else from Loyola Chicago, probably hoisting that Missouri Valley Conference, also known as Arch Madness Tournament Championship. We also have Patriot League next week, Horizon, West Coast. That's obviously a big one. I'm going to hone in a little more on the West Coast Conference because that's a bigger tournament in my opinion. I mean, you have potentially 4 teams from this conference getting into March Madness this year. You have Gonzaga, obviously number 1 overall team in the country. They're locked. They're not leaving the tournament this year. They've already locked their way in. They have St. Mary's, who's a 6 seed right now in the tournament right now. They actually have to face Gonzaga in their last regular season game, which is, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing for the St. Mary Gales right there. And then you have San Francisco, who's a surprise team this year, 21-7, dominant. I mean, they were looking very good. No one really took them seriously at the beginning of the year just because they were undefeated, but they're getting wins in a somewhat better conference now in the West Coast Conference. So, and then Gonzaga actually is going to San Francisco tomorrow to play San Fran. So that's a very big game, and I believe that's on ESPN2. And you have BYU. BYU's right there. They are right on that bubble. They are either going to be the first team or second team out on a lot of people's analysis. And they're right now, I believe I have them as the first team out. Yeah, they're my first team out. And it's just the inconsistencies with BYU. I mean, they've got swept by Gonzaga this year, obviously. They just don't look good. I mean, compared to like better teams, the only hanging grace right now is that they absolutely destroyed Oregon in Portland back in November. So BYU is definitely one team to look out for in that West Coast Conference in terms of their conference tournament, which also starts next week. But there's plenty of conference tournaments to start next week as well with the Atlantic Sun. We have the Colonial, Southern, Sun Belt. We also got, I already said the Missouri Valley. We got the Big South. And we already said the Ohio Valley. So conference tournaments starting right there. But in terms of other bubble teams right now, Florida, Michigan, Indiana, and UNC are pretty much my big ones in those big power conferences. I mean, Florida, they suffered a bad loss against Arkansas, and they are right there. They're either in or out, depending on who they beat or who they lose to, just because it's so close, And honestly, it could come down to their tournament run, depending on where they're seated and how far they can get in the SEC tournament. And that's the same for Michigan and Indiana. Michigan is really, really trending in the wrong direction right now. We've already talked about that on Monday with the whole Juwan Howard situation, along with just Memphis, not Memphis, excuse me, along with Michigan losing a bunch of players who are out for this game tonight against Rutgers, which is a very big game. I know you're going to tune into that game tonight, but that's a big game for Michigan as well. And you have no head coach and 3 of your key players are out. I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, it just seems like Michigan is just collapsing at the wrong time. So they're a team to look out for. I think they will be on the outside looking in. And Indiana, they lost a tough one. What was that, Monday against Ohio State in overtime? It seemed like it was very back and forth. Indiana was just clinging back into this game, but then Ohio State just ran away with it in overtime. And Indiana, if they can't get any more wins within this conference, then that's another team that's looking the wrong way in terms of their tournament seeding potentially. And then finally, I talked about UNC. UNC, they got a big win that they actually needed at home against Louisville. But then don't forget, they still have Duke next was it next Saturday in the final game for Coach K in the regular season as a head coach, which is going to be very emotional. Obviously, it's one of the biggest rivalries, if not the biggest rivalry in college basketball. And Duke is now in a very kind of comfortable position where they're probably going to be a tournament lock, probably are a tournament lock already. And then you have this UNC team who is on that bubble and fighting for that, chance to make it to March Madness without Roy Williams for the first time. So it's very, very tricky to analyze what UNC is going to do. They could have a big run in the ACC tournament, but at the same time, I mean, they could collapse at the end of the regular season. But right now, a quality win against Louisville last night is heading in the right direction for them. Those are pretty much my biggest bubble teams to watch, along with Memphis. Memphis right now, they're out of the American Conference. They're racking up some wins. They still have a pretty decent schedule. They got to play Houston again, and it's not going to get it. And that's the last game of the season for the Tigers for Memphis. So if Penny Hardaway can coach the way into some wins, then, and depending on how they seed in the ACA in the American tournament, there's a chance we could talk about Memphis being one of those last teams in, and as a lot of people have them as that last team in right now. So there's a lot of bubble teams, a lot of stuff going on. But I'm excited for next week. Ari, how are you feeling about conference tournaments starting next week?
Super excited. We got games going on pretty much all day from like 9 a.m. Pacific time on, and then we're 18 days till Selection Sunday, and I believe 21 days till the first day of round one, where we truly have games going all day. So it's exciting times if you're a college basketball fan, or even just March Madness specifically. This is the last week of just regular season. Then we got Monday starts conference tournament, and then we'll have obviously the bigger conferences start the tournament later on, like first week of March and so on. But I mean, in a way, the conference tournaments to really watch for teams to sneak in, I would say, are more the mid-major, smaller conferences that will start as early as Monday, Tuesday next week, February 28th, March 1st. So exciting times for everything. So that will do it for this episode. We'll see you guys again on Friday.
One more thing. Also, big game out of the Mountain West tonight. We got Wyoming versus Colorado State. That's at 6 p.m. Pacific time on CBS Sports Network. I want you to watch it. Ari, I know I'm going to watch it. That's pretty much going to be the game of the year in the Mountain West. You have Wyoming, who's a very, very dominant team. Magical story out of Wyoming. National head coach of the year. I forgot his name. He's on that team. But they have a big three, Wyoming. And then you look at Colorado State, who's just been dominating all year, looking at the top of the conference. So I'm very excited for this matchup tonight between Wyoming and Colorado State. I'm definitely going to watch it. We're definitely going to talk about that on Friday as well. We also have big games tomorrow that we got to talk about. We'll give you some updates about whatever the MLB situation is. And we're looking forward to the weekend as we head into the final weekend of regular season play in college basketball, and we begin conference tournament season.
Yep, and we'll talk Rutgers, Michigan as well, of course. And then tomorrow we got the NBA starting back up, so we'll probably talk a little bit about that on Friday. So a lot going on, a lot to talk about. If there's anything breaking or anything, again, on Instagram at AKP Sports YT is our Instagram, where we post clips from these episodes and then just other news and notes. And other than that, we'll catch you all on the episode next Friday. Thank you all for tuning in.